Hey everyone, it's great to be with you today. Thanks so much for taking the time to connect with us. I'm Jason Belland, Executive in Residence here at Attain Partners. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be talking tech and talking continuing ed and enrollment management with my good friend, Tom Green. Tom has spent his entire career working in the enrollment management space, both on the ground at universities and at ACRO. I worked with Tom for a while as well at Salesforce. I had the good fortune of working with Tom at Salesforce. We've stayed connected since our time together at Salesforce. Tom, it's amazing to be with you today and really amazing to be talking about continuing education in this time where the workforce needs are changing so rapidly. Workers, learners, potential learners, their needs are changing. Their need to upskill is rapidly evolving, but also their expectations are changing about what learning needs to look like going forward. And that creates such a great opportunity for universities to lean in on continuing education programs and be of service to the learners that they're connected with. I'm excited to jump in, Tom, to the conversation with you today. But first, I'm guessing there's about maybe a few people in the audience, probably only a few people who don't know you. But for those folks, would love to just get a little bit of an intro from you.
Oh, great. Thanks. It's so good to be here with you, Jason. It's a real pleasure. So, as you mentioned, I spent my career, it's coming up on 40 years in higher
Amazing.
education. I know it's hard to believe. And I've seen this tremendous evolution. I've worked at 7 universities. And I've worked with, over 100 myself directly through ACRO in helping people just address their most pressing enrollment needs, which increasingly today means revenue needs. As we look at the shallowing of other resources and support for universities, and net tuition revenue from any source has become more and more important across those years that I've been in this field. And so, whether it's been directly helping as the chief enrollment officer at both public and private universities, large and small, urban, suburban, rural, across the U.S., or helping community colleges through research flagships, we have a lot of needs that are just very, very common across this space. And this is such a timely conversation on continuing ed because I am hearing it more today than I probably have at any time in the last 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hearing the same thing, just an increased focus on this space. And I just think it's and just such a great opportunity when I think about the mission of our universities, just such a great opportunity to really make an impact with workers who may be absolutely terrified right now about the changing workforce and whether the skills that they acquired years ago are going to get them through this maybe the second half of their career, and maybe there's a need to upskill, and sometimes that might look like a master's degree, but other times that might look like stackable certificates and credentials and other ways of learning that agile continuing ed programs can really support. So I'd love to dive in with you. Tom, we were talking about the recent census data as we were preparing for this, and looking at adults who have college, some college, no degree, workers who feel that their skills are going to be disrupted by 2030. That came out of a World Economic Forum data. How are you seeing all of this kind of market data around folks who maybe have some college, folks who feel their world is about to change pretty rapidly from a skills perspective? How is this shaping and changing the landscape for how we think about continuing education programs?
Yeah, it's really interesting in thinking about this because this is one of those unique opportunities in education where we are seeing needs across the spectrum of educational attainment. So whether you never completed your high school diploma, there's a small percent of Americans who still don't have that equivalency, and that's just seemed like a currency, right? A calling
Hmm.
card for any type of employment, up through people who have PhDs, right? They all are seeing needs right now. They may be slightly different needs, to get back and get reskilled or upskilled. We probably last saw this at the time when computers started to come into the workplace. And
Hmm.
so maybe, the 80s, that's, a long time ago, but when computers started to come in, people felt ill-equipped to learn them. And
Yes.
so, they often had to go get, the whatever book for dummies that, went along with it, or go back to school and take a course and really learning. You saw a lot of community organizations popping up, learning the PC
Yes,
of
that's
course.
right.
So now we're faced with this new technology in AI that is going to touch everyone. And so whether you are, some college no degree or a high school graduate, or you have a baccalaureate through a PhD, you're seeing this impact and this need, this drive to get some additional training, get some education, just to make sure you're going to be relevant in the workforce, whether you don't have those skills and are trying to get them for the first time, or whether it's been a very long time since you ever had a course that even talked about neural networking or statistics
Yes.
or AI. This is really an opportunity for higher education and post-secondary education to kind of rally around the American workforce and provide those skills.
So let me ask you just, I want to get into the kind of, I want to get into the brass tacks of enrollment management in a minute here. But before we get there, I've had so many conversations over the years with folks on the academic side at universities, just observing that, look, it's hard for us procedurally to be agile. And we see a market trend. Okay, something's happening with AI as an example, right? But by the time I come up with an idea as a professor and get that into a course that's listed as a program, it takes a very long time, and I'm always like significantly trailing where the market is. Sometimes that can be a good thing because we don't want to be just reacting all the time. We want to have a process, but I wonder if there's a different mindset or approach that continuing ed programs need to take, and if you're seeing any programs doing that where they can be a little bit more in the market, if you will, and partnering with skills that are needed now, in addition to maybe the more deliberate work that they do with curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah, and I sit on the board of a university. And so we
Hmm.
were just discussing this at our recent meeting. I'm on their academic and student affairs committee, and we were talking about the frustration that the university has with the timeline of
Hmm.
getting programs like data analytics. Certificates in AI are easier, and I'll talk about that in a second. But those changes which are responsive to the workplace and technology needs, and learners are coming asking, for these.
Hmm.
But if you change more than a certain percentage of a degree, or you start a brand new degree, it has to go through all these checks and approvals, which can take months and months and months to go through. And by that time, you kind of feel like the market has slipped away from you.
Sure. Yeah.
So, in turning to things like short-term certificates, which till up to this point have not been really regulated by accreditors and will soon, those have been kind of a fast track to take actual credit-bearing courses and offer something rather quickly and nimbly to
Hmm.
respond to the market. And there have been some great successes in that. The continuing ed side, though, is much faster. And so if you have that agility and you have the integration between your continuing ed and your curricular houses within the
Hmm.
university, to be able to say, look, we want to pilot something, we want to try something. We think there's a market for X out there. Can we use our continuing ed as an incubator to test
Yes.
this market and see if this works? Go out there. It's a very low risk way for institutions to do that. And I've seen that done very successfully at a number of institutions rather than kind of this old school, I would say, view of this as, well, we do the curriculum over here. These are degrees, and they're kind of
Yes.
sacrosanct in that sense. And then there's continuing ed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
for, yeah,
yeah.
other
I mean, I
people.
remember back in the day when I was beginning my career, continuing ed was like off in the basement somewhere, and it was very we there was definitely a wall deliberately between that and the rest of the house.
Right.
But what you were saying resonated with me as well. I saw at a previous university I worked at in the executive education programs, that really being a test bed for things, interesting ideas that were kind of in the market that could then get rolled into an MBA program as a longer term proposition later. But it gave, the exec ed gave faculty a chance to road test the content, see what they would want to change or adjust as they start to think about making that part of a larger degree program. If this is a great, I love that you've called this out for folks who might be listening, thinking, we do have this divide on campus, continuing ed's off on the side, and then we have our degree program, but we need to get to this because that's more learner centric as well. But thinking about the whole learner experience and what they might need over time, what conversations need to be had to kind of begin kind of breaking down that wall between the degree and then continuing ed?
Yeah, that's yes. I think it's really just it starts in two places, I think. One is at the very top of academic affairs in really opening up this conversation, saying, we have this continuum of education that we offer as a university. And it starts with, or the earliest parts of that could be continuing ed, and seeing that as a vital link into the curricular side of the organization. There's a very large research institution, one of the top universities in the world, that uses its MOOCs and
Mm-hmm.
offers, and still runs. We thought MOOCs were dead, still offers thousands of MOOCs, but sees that as really the recruitment ground for
Ah,
a percent of its graduate students that they aren't reaching in other ways. And so they
yeah.
offer these free courses out there. A certain number of people, thousands and probably tens of thousands of people take them. And a certain percent, maybe just a couple hundred at that university, then enter the applicant phase for a master's or doctoral program. And they see that as tremendously beneficial as a way to pipeline those students into their degree programs. And I think those kinds of examples and sharing those examples and those conversations really help to understand that very well-known universities are seeing this as an advantage.
Yes.
It's
And
not for people who think, oh, continuing ed, oh, we shouldn't dabble in that. That's not, part of our curricular journey. It's an absolute foundation of it.
yeah, and I just love thinking about continuing ed as kind of the tip of the spear for the university out in the market, engaging, helping to feed pipeline for the university, helping to feed ideas into curriculum. That's a great way to think about the space is really a ground for innovation and for engaging more individuals to connect in with the university. The MOOCs that you just mentioned, oh yes, we all thought MOOCs were dead, but I love that. I love that you're talking about that as a recruitment ground, kind of building pipeline for a university. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about enrollment management, strategic enrollment management. Oftentimes, if maybe folks hear strategic enrollment management as a term, um, their mind might immediately go to four-year college degree. How do we manage our pipeline through that? Which
Right.
totally makes sense. Um, but let's think about it and help us think about it in the context of continuing ed programs. How should we think about SEM for non-degree?
Yeah. So there are a number of things that really
Mm,
poured over into this, and I've seen the field continue to expand in ways. And when we started this a long time ago, it was really about high school students becoming freshmen, right?
yep, yep.
That's even an antiquated term, but we saw that, and we really focused on that, and we did some things there that were really significant. One is we understood that we had to build relationships with those secondary schools and then community colleges, et cetera, where we had to demonstrate value to them. We had to make it easy for them to come to our institutions. And so those principles still extend to today continuing ed. We need to have a workforce within our recruitment arm that is going out to businesses and hospitals and agencies and talking with them and building these relationships because that's where a lot of our adult learners are going to start their journey. Uh,
Mhm.
and very similar to the issues we face today in enrollment management with trying to get adult learners into our graduate and our undergraduate programs, they're an elusive audience, right? They are
Mhm.
not sitting in a secondary school and coming to an office with a person whose job it is to help them get to our institution. So we have to go out there and build those relationships in our local communities. And most of our students will, come from that local community into our continuing education program. And much like we learned how to do recruitment through those programs, and we did things like campus visits and open houses, those type of things. We need to shift those type of things into virtual chat nights. Learning
Mhm.
about opportunities in AI, that type of thing. Open those up as resources, demonstrate value to our adults, and thereby show them that we have value as an institution. I've worked with adult learners for a long time in my career, and I find the hardest step for them is the first step. It's that
Yeah.
first step of
Yeah.
coming into the institution, thinking I'm going to be the only 30-year-old in this class.
Sure.
I don't know if I can do it. It's been a long time since I've been in school. And so many of those students need a toe in the water. And
Mhm.
continuing ed is a great toe in the water for them. It allows them to come back in without feeling like they've got a lot on the line financially, or
Yes.
if it doesn't work, they're going to get an F, on their
Yeah.
permanent
Yeah.
record, that type of thing. So
Sure.
it's a
Yeah.
great way to get them reintroduced or introduced to education and get them to feel comfortable in that space.
I
Once,
love that, and I love calling out really. It goes back to just sense of belonging, I think, as an idea of just that's again, we talk about that in oftentimes in the context of the freshman or the first gen student, but really that adult learner who I was thinking 40 something, but maybe 30 something, but coming back saying, hey, I need some skills here, but yeah, I'm absolutely terrified of I'm going to get the F on this, and like I'm going to find out that I'm the fraud I always thought I was, So, and creating that through that marketing journey of what is the language, the visuals, that support journey of the onboarding, and through that initial toe in the water experience of just uh, letting that individual know they belong there, they're supported there, and the curriculum that they're engaging with has some connection point back to what their goals are, their career goals. Um, Tom, I'd love to ask you. I love that you mentioned earlier enrollment management I think, is effectively revenue management. Another way of thinking about that. How should institutions be thinking about? I mean, it's one thing to get the student to come in for that initial continuing education program. How what approaches or strategies are you seeing folks use to build revenue from that first touch point? The most expensive thing is probably getting Tom Green to show up for that first thing, right? Acquiring that, we had to go find Tom Green, we had to personalize marketing to see, and now he's on the hook, and now he's taking a short program with us for a couple months. So, how are they thinking about making sure that that sticks in some way, either with you, Tom, or or what is the relationship with maybe your employer or others around you where you're having a great experience? Let's get folks from your team to come in and also we can upskill the organization. How are they thinking about that individual journey, but also kind of an account journey as well?
Yeah. So, on the individual level, first of all, I think it's open acknowledgement that some people, will come in and they will do one thing,
Yep.
and that's it. And you want them to have a positive experience,
Yep.
and you want them to offer them something, offer them a digital badge, offer them something they can put on LinkedIn,
Yep.
offer them a little currency that they can use with that, whether it's just to prove to their employer that they're out there, being relevant, or maybe they're searching for a new opportunity.
Yep.
Give them something digitally that they can use. And there's so many great options today for badging that are really simple. And I use badging as a term that's a very low data type of activity. apart from, these broader comprehensive learning records that are really, much, much richer and can go much farther than that, but give them a little piece to start with. And then we hope to get them to subscribe, if you will, right? To come back for something else, to take that second course, to do something else with us. So realize that that's one journey for the learner, right? And that's perfectly fine. But we want to be thoughtful in this way, and this is often a tough conversation in academic affairs. At what point do we want to be able to say, you know what? You've done something that we want to reward with actual credit. If you want to keep going in this journey, you don't start from zero. You've already done
Hmm.
some learning with us. How can
Yes.
we acknowledge that and say, this is part of a journey toward a certificate, some type of credential degree that will really advance your career and really advance you in your journey? So that conversation, it's happening more today, but I think because of the urgency around revenue and the urgency and the acknowledgement that continuing ed is a place where that's going to start. And so we have to think about that stackable feature.
Yes.
I heard someone talk, just really stuck with me that, a lot of what happens is we have experiences that are horizontal. And so
Hmm.
you do one after the next, after the next, after the next, but it doesn't get you vertical. And what
Mm.
we want to do is think about how we are able to take our programs and our offerings and be able to stack them, be able to scale that learning and scaffold that in a way that allows the learner to not just have a lot of shallow knowledge, but really get that deeper knowledge with it. So those are those conversations. People are having them, and they are thoughtful conversations about
Hmm.
trying to do that. And the workforce Pell that is, out there on the table has a contingency in it that you can only use it for programs that contain stackability, that
Oh,
have the
interesting.
opportunity to move towards something, unless they're like an end in themselves, like a welding certificate, because
Uh-huh. Sure.
that's in and of itself. But anything other than that, it has to have that feature. So I think we're seeing some incentives being put
Yes.
out there for institutions to really think about how they will be able to scale and scaffold learning from the start with continuing education up through degree programs.
Yeah, I love that. Let me ask. So you mentioned kind of revenue urgency that a number of institutions are facing. I want to talk about alumni for a minute. I've been having some great conversations with folks recently about how to re-engage alumni, um, maybe actually completely restart relationships with alumni that they had lost touch with over years. And alumni or advancement teams, relations advancement teams, kind of sitting on tens of thousands of names of alumni, but looking for a way to engage them that's more bi-directional in terms of value exchange versus just a fundraising appeal. The continuing ed space seems like a great way to re-engage with alumni who maybe are mid-career, maybe you haven't really talked to them in the last decade, but who are now maybe but had a great experience at your university, maybe are in a transitional point in their career and could use some partnership in that. How are you, or maybe, yeah, what are you seeing in the space, I guess, of alumni? It's always seems to be a challenging space in that it often is the case that the alumni team really doesn't know that much about what happened during the degree program with students, and is
Yeah.
kind of flying blind a little bit. But there's such an opportunity here to really show up differently as a university, as a career, lifelong learning partner to your alumni. What are you seeing?
Oh, this is such a rich topic. Let me start with affinity. And we know that in fundraising, a lot of people will give back when they feel an affinity to some part of the university. And so
Mm-hmm.
kind of the larger logo of the institution will have some appeal. But when you hone in on the organizations, the schools, the programs that students were involved with during that time at the university, they have much more of a heartfelt connection to that. The difficulty is, of course, with our data is that we only port over, right, this very small amount of information over to the alumni system, which is often disconnected from the other systems
Hmm.
on campus. And so now we know they got a degree in X, right? And they got a degree in this year. And
Hmm.
maybe we have some biodemographic information, um, maybe even from the day they applied, right? That is
Hmm.
still there. So it's really dated.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really help us much. But if we can port over more information, what organizations were they affiliated with?
Hmm.
Maybe they did a study abroad experience. Maybe they did a research internship in a lab. And I will tell you, of all the scientists I know, they still know their research supervisor from college. So, all those type of data points can come over and help us have a much richer connection and much stronger idea of what our alumni may be interested in. Maybe they want to reconnect in a way that's somehow associated with that student organization that they did. So those are ways that we can have better ideas of things to test and try with our
Hmm.
continuing ed. Um, but today we know that AI is just that's the coin of the realm in continuing ed. So things that we can offer our alumni to say, how about coming back for a free seminar, an intro to
Hmm.
AI, or here's a free 2-week online self-paced course for you as an alum of the institution
Hmm.
understanding the basics of artificial intelligence. Something like that to draw them back in, give them some value. Uh,
Yes.
and we know like the worst way to fundraise is to not have any communication and then just send out this cold letter asking for money, right?
Right, right.
We haven't done
Yeah.
any friend raising there. We've only done fundraising. And
Uh-huh.
so, the more we can draw, especially our young alumni who aren't ready to donate financially back into the institution, and then start offering them a catalog of things, maybe at a discount. It doesn't have to always be free, but maybe offering them an alum discount on continuing education courses. Then seeing, you may be able to draw some of those baccalaureate holders back to a master's or doctoral program. That's fantastic if that happens. But just seeing that there is a market there for your graduates in helping them reskill and upskill. And those relationships I talked about with your employers in the community, using those as a sounding board. What are
Hmm.
the things that your employers are struggling with? What do they need to be teaching their employees? And that then leads to this bigger question of the contract education.
Hmm.
So, can I go to maybe I have an engineering program at my institution? Can I go to an engineering company locally and say, how can I help you provide continuing ed for licensure for your engineers? How can we do that in a way that maybe is asynchronous, or
Hmm.
maybe there are a number of your engineers who would like to come to a course together, and you as an employer would like to pay for that course.
Yes,
So
yes.
that has been done successfully for decades now, and probably is a very underutilized tool for institutions to take out continuing education for professionals right into the workplace to help them keep their licenses or just educate them on things like writing skills, communications,
Yes. Yeah.
presentation skills.
Well,
Yeah.
this came up. I was in Tokyo giving a presentation just a few weeks ago, which was amazing. And I was having a conversation with a university that was connected with an auto manufacturer in Japan. And it was interesting to me because I was pushing on skills needs around AI and other things that were kind of that are in the zeitgeist right now. But that university came back and said the number one thing that this auto manufacturer was kind of looking for was what are the like durable skills or soft skills. And the university is saying actually we excel at that. We may not be the most innovative in terms of the bleeding edge of technology, but we're really good at the communication skills, writing, problem solving. And so that's a place where we can partner with that business and really show up for them where they can maybe address some of the like hard skill issues in a different way, but we can help set their employees up for longer term growth and success. And could could you maybe, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because it's we were talking earlier about universities being agile in the sense of like what AI, tech, all these things that people need to get trained on. But there's this other set of skills that really should be core to so many universities that are really the liberal arts skills
Yeah.
that seem to be having their moment here as as everything's getting automated.
Well, it's such a win-win in this,
Hmm.
because you also at the same time you're seeing certain departments at universities, because of the hyper focus on STEM programs, there's been a corresponding decrease in things like, art history,
Hmm.
uh, language programs, those type of things, where those faculty are excellent faculty in these durable skills areas,
Yep.
almost, irregardless of their discipline, right? They're very, very good at teaching communication,
Yes.
writing, those type of things. So being able to offer some of your faculty load in ways that they can be out in the community teaching and doing something
Hmm.
different. Now,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say, we've done this before, right? Not every faculty member is going to feel like that's their jam. This is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we'll be able to do. But you'll be surprised at some of the faculty who, really enjoy this as an alternative to the things they've been doing for several years. And I really have never been disappointed putting a faculty member in front of a group of people. They are so good at leading a group, at leading a
Yes.
conversation, at engaging people. That's what they do day in, day out. And your university really shines in that way when they're in front of different groups of people out in the workplace.
I love that. Tom, we've got to wrap up our time here in just a couple minutes. Maybe I'll just land with just asking you to look into the future of strategic enrollment management. What do you see as what's next for SEM, particularly in this world of continuous lifelong learning? Maybe a world where, an 18-year-old out of high school, maybe they begin their university degree career not with a degree, but with some stackable credentials, and later go and start the degree. So any number of different pathways, any number of different people on different journeys might pursue. How do we? What does SEM start to look like in that context?
Yeah, I'll gaze into my crystal ball a little bit with that and say that I think we're really seeing much, much more of a need to have a continuous engagement with learners and understanding that by design, the American higher education system is porous, right? It's
Mhm.
designed for people to move in and out of it, to move between institutions. And, that requires us as educators and as leaders at our institutions to really thread that engagement in ways that make sense for the learner, right? We have, focused on ways that make sense for us because we're accountable to
Mm.
completion rates and that type of thing. But increasingly for the learner, they may do this for a little while, then they're out. Then they're back in to do this and then out. And so we're going to be working with our faculty, and academic affairs leaders to find really innovative ways to get recognition for all credit and all learning
Mhm.
in ways that we haven't done that in the past, so that the relevance shifts from our needs to complete along a certain curricular path to their need to complete a meaningful credential that gives them engagement in the economy of whatever world they may find themselves in with it. But it's more creative and less linear than we've
Yes.
had in the past. And I think that's where the future of enrollment management is really headed, is into this very creative, nonlinear way of thinking about
Mm.
education. And we will be the ones who will be charged with connecting those engagements for the learners back to the institution.
I love that, and this is an exciting time to be in higher ed and in continuing ed, to be thinking about enrollment management as we're reimagining what this experience looks like. So I'm glad, I'm grateful for your friendship and partnership on this, Tom, and to have you collaborating with me always. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It's been a real pleasure and back at you. Feel the same way. Thank you.
Uh, Awesome. Thanks everyone for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Leave some comments for us. Let us know what's top of mind for you. I'm looking forward to having more conversations like this as we continue to explore the continuing ed space and enrollment management. Thanks a lot. See you later.